Investing is exciting, or at least that's what the media and the investment industry would have us believe. After all, dramatic headlines and talk of big returns helps the investment industry to sell itself. And they've done a fantastic job of conditioning us to only care about performance, star fund managers, and the latest trends. But the reality is we have no way of predicting, let alone controlling those things. So shouldn't we worry about what we can control? In the investment industry, one thing we can control is cost. If you can save 1% in cost, that's like a 1% risk-free performance bonus. It sounds incredibly boring in comparison to the flashy headlines and the latest investment trends, but study after study has shown that cost is the single biggest predictor of the returns you're likely to get. In fact, a fund manager called David Norman carried out a study that showed if you picked a retail investment fund purely on cost, you were guaranteed a better performance the lower the cost of the fund that you chose. So what are the costs associated with investing? Time and time again, clients say to me, I'm only paying 0.5%, and with every single one of those clients, the actual charge they have been paying is significantly higher than that. It's common to see total charges in the region of 2, 2.5, even 3% per annum. A good way to think about it is like a game of pass the parcel. You start off with this huge parcel, but as it goes round the circle, everyone takes a layer off, everyone takes their slice, and the parcel gets smaller and smaller until the winner ends up with a tiny prize in the middle. Costs of investing are very like that. You think you're going to get the big return, big prize, but over time that's eaten away by charges. Now, you'd expect to see an annual management charge, but that's just part of the cost of investing. It's like buying a car. The list price that you see advertised is only part of the cost. There's insurance, tax, fuel, and all the other costs associated with owning a car. There's an ongoing cost associated with investing, which many clients who come to see me for the first time are simply not aware of. For instance, transaction costs, fund custody fees, dealing costs, dilution levies, stamp duty, and the list goes on. Sadly, the more that your fund manager is buying and selling, the more you end up paying and the less you get in return. So, the lesson to learn is the more you chop and change your portfolio, the better. In fact, Warren Buffett says his favourite holding period is forever, suggesting that successful investors do not frequently trade in and out of investments. Just like pass the parcel, each layer in that parcel represents another layer of charges, some of which you may have no idea you're paying, and those charges eat away at your eventual prize or return. We also have this idea in this country that you get what you pay for. The more expensive something is, the better it must be. Going back to the car analogy, if you buy a Porsche, you'd expect to get a better car than if you pay for a Dacia. If you buy a Hermes handbag, you'd expect it to be better quality than one made in the local market. But investing is an exception to that. By paying less, you actually get a better outcome as well as a better product. The problem is that most advisors don't understand what the evidence tells us, or in some cases are incentivized to ignore that science. At Cooper Parry, we don't opt for cheap for the sake of cheap. It's the happy byproduct of a simple portfolio construction that gives us the best risk-return profile. Another reason clients tend to ignore costs is that in percentage terms they seem relatively minor. And yes, if the market's steaming ahead, then a charge of 2% per annum is not such a big deal. But in a bad year, you will need an active manager to outperform the market to overcome those costs. But we have to remember that we pay those costs each and every year, particularly when it comes to your pension fund, that could be over many decades. We're all familiar with the compounding effect of returns building year on year, but the same applies to costs. Imagine you invest £1 million over 30 years. If you achieved a return of 4% per annum, you'd end up with a fund worth around £3 million. But imagine if you were able to reduce your costs by 1% per year and effectively increase the return to 5%. The same fund, after 30 years, will be worth 4 million. So just by reducing costs, you've increased the value of your investment by £1 million. It's the equivalent of 12 Porsche Carreras. Now, Porsche might not be your thing, but you know what I mean. You can't argue with that. It's just basic arithmetic. So it comes down to this. The total cost of investing can be difficult to understand or even quantify, depending on how opaque your investment advisor's charges are. Add to that the unpredictability of investment markets and our inability to control investment outcomes. Let's focus on what we can control. Let's focus on keeping our costs low, because that's what the evidence tells us will make the biggest difference to your investment experience.